and the people of South Africa must pay more for VAT via taxes to help you catch up on your mess. And South Africans and the Democratic Alliance are saying no, not under our watch. This is something that the Republic of South Africa has made it clear to the ANC and to Godongwana that you've had 31 years of having to fix the fiscal framework, of having to fix this country's budget and making sure that the people's money is used accordingly. Instead, you've done so wastefully. A tax increase is a direct threat against this. It is a direct threat against the hopes and aspirations of South Africans who want to experience freedom in this land, our land, South Africa. When we said we're going to rescue South Africa, we meant that in government, not under our watch, will South Africans have.
Guys, this lady, Karabo, I'm slowly beginning to really enjoy her antics and her force. You know, I think the women in South Africa are really rising up, and I would actually urge the South Africans here who are women on this channel, Kwazemy. I think this time in history is your time. All right. I was just speaking recently to some of the youth in Kenya, especially in the last finance bill protest that actually turned Kenya upside down and even forced the government to take down the proposal of the finance bill, almost like what is happening with this VAT hike now. And most of the protesters who are at the forefront of that really violent protest that even led to, some deaths and all of that were women. So women are beginning to take center stage in history, in defining the course of history of Africa. And I think in South Africa, you guys are not left out. We could see the likes of warrior, analytical goddess Mandisa Mashego, and I'm seeing now the rise of this Karabo. She's the spokesperson of the DA, and I'll be looking for more of the women in South Africa who are beginning. I know most of you have told me to interview the lady on a citizen concern. I'm really working towards that. I will get her to this channel and talk about some really deep issues on how she sees South Africa. But here, Karabo is actually breaking down why the whole thing with the VAT hike was sort of like a constitutional contradiction as it were, and why the DA just couldn't, at their watch, sit back and look, just sit back and allow, just like how they fought against what they defined would be a coalitional disaster. If the ANC, EFF, and MK party, it was called, what's the name now? It was called, I'll try to remember anyway, but Doomsday Coalition. Yes, it was supposed to be. So they fought really hard, and that's what got them into the GNU. Now they fought really hard again in this VAT hike. Probably this is how they will fight maybe the Bella Bill. Maybe this is how the DA will also fight the NHI, which people still think is coming, and many of these things. So I'm beginning to see the agency of the DA now in its fight for South Africans. And the likes of Mark Brock, I think for me that's the most favorite guy I have in the DA, because I just like the passion he brings to the whole thing, the whole political scenery. But Karabo here is actually making some really powerful statements, arguing that Minister Godongwana just could not have breached the authority. So if I'm listening to her correctly, she actually argues that, executive authority, right, can only tax South Africans to regulate behavior. But in order to pass laws, for example, that should tax South Africans in terms of revenue, that should actually only be done by the legislative wing of government. And that's, in the person of the parliament or in the provincial legislature at the level of the provinces, and also then the municipal councils at the level of the municipalities. Now, Minister Godongwana and I think the ANC government now, I think they wanted to assume the function of the legislative arm of government and to just pass this tax without going through parliament. And this is where the problem now rose. And luckily for South Africans, I think I would argue that the likes of the DA and Iron Lady Helen Zille was smart enough to be able to capture that contradiction to the point now where in the court case, for example, Karabo now argues that Minister Godongwana actually called the DA for an out of court settlement. In other words, it actually appeared that argument was the kind of like that bit that broke the camel's back. All right, let's quickly listen to Karabo, DA spokesperson, break down some of the details on how it is that the DA fought in court and how they actually have come to have a victory where the VAT 0.5% VAT hike had been scrapped by Minister Godongwana. And share your thoughts in the comments.
Viva DA, viva! Viva! Hala, hala, DA, halala! Halala! Hoi, hoi, DA, hoi, hoi! Hoi, hoi! Democrats, South Africans, good morning. My name is Karabo. I am the DA's national spokesperson. We're coming to you live here outside the Western Cape Division of the High Court. Joining me here today is the federal chairperson of the Democratic Alliance, that is Dr. Ivan Meyer. I'm also joined by the DA's chief whip in parliament, that is George Michalakis, as well as our DA spokesperson on finance, that is Dr. Mark Burke. Now, colleagues, today's fight is very simple and clear, one that resonates with all South Africans. Nobody has money to pay more for food. Nobody has money to pay more for baby formula, for school shoes and basic living. And our fight today in this court that will be heard is one that says we want an urgent interdict as a matter of urgency against a VAT hike. That is the fight that the Democratic Alliance has committed to, and those are the arguments that are going to be heard now. 8 days from now, 9 if you include today, will be the 1st of May. As the Democratic Alliance, together with South Africans, we're saying down with this sort of thing. Pansy with VAT, pansy. We do not want to have that, and that is the call we're making. We know very well that the problem here is not only the fact that people want to tax us, but they want to tax us because they do not want to cut the fat of fruitless, irregular, and wasteful expenditure that they are beneficiaries of. And we are saying, as the Democratic Alliance, with us in the GNU, that day will never rise again. Ours is to be a vanguard for South Africans. Ours is to fight to make sure that we protect South Africans. Honestly, people, South Africans do not have money, and this is not something that the Democratic Alliance is saying. This is something that the Republic of South Africa has made it clear to the ANC and to Godongwana that you've had 31 years of having to fix the fiscal framework, of having to fix this country's budget and making sure that the people's money is used accordingly. Instead, you've done so wastefully. And now you want to play catch up, and the people of South Africa must pay more for VAT via taxes to help you catch up on your mess. And South Africans and the Democratic Alliance are saying, no, we will not have this happen, not under our watch. Now, technically, there are two parts to this thing. Today's case is on the immediate interdict and on the process that was followed by Parliament that was flawed. Colleagues, we're going to go inside. And the arguments there, I want to remind all of us, are very clear. On behalf of the Republic, with the Republic, the Democratic Alliance is saying, if nobody is interested to represent South Africa and fight for their interests, count on the Democratic Alliance, because we are here and we will fight for your interests. Yeah. Inside the arguments are to make sure that Mama can put food on the table. Yeah. Is to make sure that when Papa goes to work, he can come back and be able to afford school shoes for their children. Yes. Is to make sure that at the end of the day, when payday comes, we're able to put food on the table and take our kids to school at the cost of our liking. Is to make sure that young people, when they go seek job opportunities, they're able to pay transport fares that are affordable. A tax increase is a direct threat against this. It is a direct threat against the hopes and aspirations of South Africans who want to experience freedom in this land, our land, South Africa. That is the fight that we are here for. That is a fight that we are relentlessly fighting for. That is a commitment that South Africans made. When we said we're going to rescue South Africa, we meant that in government, not under our watch, will South Africans have a tax increase that does not make sense. Because ultimately, we do not have a revenue collection problem. We have an expenditure problem. And so we're saying to Minister Godongwana and the ANC, cut the waste, cut the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, cut everything that is not necessary, and spend your money in accordance to what is in the best interest of South Africans. The money is there, cut the waste. We have shown you where it is. That is the fight here today.
speak a little bit more about their immediate reaction to some of the arguments that we heard in court today is the DA national spokesperson, Karabo. Thanks for chatting to Newsroom Africa once again. Would you say that today was a victory on the DA's behalf?
Certainly it was. The arguments that were presented by our counsel here in court are in alignment with what it is that we have promised South Africans to be arguing about. So we made it very clear that we are challenging the constitutionality of Section 7.4 of the VAT Act and the how it affects South Africans, the implications there is. It's been a long day. We've been sitting in court. Even the English bundles are depleting. But yes, the implications thereof on South Africans. So what is important here for South Africans to know is that we have a case study that we are of the belief that the Constitutional Court has already ruled in favor of, that strengthens our case. You would know that in the past, when you looked at the case of the Northwest, for example, the case there against the MEC then in the Northwest, as well as the Gambling Authority there, that when a decision was taken on delegating power to the MEC to call for a VAT increase or a revenue collection increase, that there was a court case that was heard that ruled that it cannot be the case, because the executive authority of this country does not have the constitutional authority or the freedom to tax South Africans for revenue collection. So it's very important for South Africans to understand the distinction here. So an executive authority can tax South Africans to regulate behavior, but it is only the legislative arm of state, which is Parliament in the national sense, which is the provincial legislatures on a provincial level, and which is municipal council on a local level, that have the power to tax South Africans for revenue collection. In the case of VAT today, the case here is that Minister Godongwana and the ANC want to tax South Africans for revenue collection. And we've obviously argued in favor to show why that is a problem, because constitutionally that the House that of the three arms of state, between the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative arm of state, of those houses, the one that has the authority to tax South Africans or to impose tax for revenue collection, that is Parliament. So that is the one part as far as the constitutional mandate is concerned. But as far as process is concerned, the question is still begged. Was there a question put before the select committee to adopt a fiscal framework? And the answer is no. The process that was followed by the select committee, the joint committee of finances of both houses, the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces, was flawed. It did not meet the master of the process there, and that's what we are arguing. So we are very confident as the Democratic Alliance that come the deadline, the 29th of May, that we will find a victory for South Africans, that we would be able to avert and cushion them from a VAT hike.
Well, Carisha Pillay, who was the senior counsel representing Parliament, did actually make the point that the question was very clear, and often you have a lot of politicking and what can come across as quite a bit of chaos when it comes to decisions. So it'll be interesting to see how the three judges that were presiding over the matter, actually interpret that as to whether or not there was really a question that was posed, and whether there was confusion by Parliament when they were actually taking on board this report. But some people say that it's an interesting bedfellow that you have found in this case in the EFF.
Yeah, it is very interesting. I mean, we never imagined, but we are happy to have a fellow here. We thought we were going to be the only people who have the sobriety to defend South Africans against the mess that we currently have. And we're happy to have people who are also sensible enough to want to fight with us. Whether or not their arguments hold more water than ours, that is yet to be seen. But as a matter of principle, the Democratic Alliance from the onset has made it clear that taxing South Africans is not a solution. What the ANC and Treasury needs to do is to reconfigure its expenditure in a way that is able to get us service delivery without punishing South Africans. South Africans in the last 31 years were supposed to see an economic surge. They were supposed to see right now us being in a position where majority of our population is employed. That is not the case. South Africans this time around deserved a fiscal framework that was going to put us in an economic growth trajectory where people are able to have job opportunities available for them, where we're able to alleviate poverty. We did not see that altogether. And so we've stopped the 2% VAT hike, and now with 0.5% 20.5, we're here in court. And we're making a promise to South Africans again that we are not tired. We'll continue to dollar what we must to rescue South Africans from the clutches of an ANC that is ungovernable to the extent of being inconsiderate and cruel to the extent of wanting to tax South Africans. South Africans who only want to be able to enter a grocery store with confidence and not have to pick and choose what to put on the table for food.
Karabo is the national spokesperson for the DA. Thank you so much for your time on